Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of The Graded Escape. So far, we've talked about how to get started in your own homeschooling journey. We've shared a little bit of information about each of us, and we've tackled some of those common misconceptions about homeschooling in our last episode.
So today's episode we've titled Curriculum Chaos, What Am I Doing? We thought that it would be a nice third episode for us to start diving into the types of homeschooling that there are out there, and then the curriculum options that are out there. It can be very overwhelming, especially for those who don't have any familiarity with teaching, to select the right curriculum for you. So we're hoping to break it down a bit more.
So we're going to start off by giving an overview of some of the different types of homeschooling structures that there are. I know when I first started, I had a very specific vision of how I wanted our homeschool to look. That has since changed slightly, but I know that that's not necessarily the case for everyone who is starting their homeschooling journey, or maybe they have started it and they need, to switch it up a little bit. So just, as an aside, these are very brief overviews of each type of option for your structure. A quick Google search will give you lots and lots of other information that you're more than welcome to obviously look into on your own. And then after we do some of that, we're then going to share some of our favorite curriculums that we've been using with our own kids, just to kind of give some insight into what we personally like. But again, we'll also give some tips on how to select your own curriculum, because it can be pretty overwhelming.
Yeah. So we are going to cover 4 types of, 5. How many types are we doing? 6 types of homeschooling structure?
We'll find out, I guess.
I think it's 6. Yeah. And we plan to go from the least restrictive, like the most free one, which is unschooling, all the way up to the more structured, most structured type of homeschooling setup. And these are very common ones that people tend to hear of, but even within these, there's like facets and groups and different, you really can do anything that you want. That's part of the joy of planning it, like making it centered around your family. So even I would suggest, even before choosing one of these homeschooling styles, you read some books about like the pace of your household, and there's some really great ones. I can put a few in the section below. One that I'm currently reading is The Joy of Slow, which I think I might have told you about. I'm blanking on the author's name. But she has some wonderful questions in there for parents to ask themselves when it comes to structuring their day and what they're wanting out of this process. That is, honestly, if I had read this before we had started, I still would have dived in it probably in a similar way. But I love the way that it frames some questions for parents to think about the way they want their day to look, and from that, some of these homeschooling structured ideas, different types might align with the way you answer those questions. So, The Joy of Slow, I'll put it in the show notes in case you want to check it out, but it's very helpful. All right, so starting with unschooling. So the least structured method is unschooling, and that is really what it sounds like. It's a philosophy that is completely child-led. Adults aren't seen as the teacher or instructor. They're really just there to support the child's learning. There aren't any, constraints. There's no formal curriculum. It's really the idea of promoting an informal and self-driven learning experience. And so, what kids are interested in, what they want to do, how they want to learn, when they want to learn, it's kind of up to them. So they hold 4 major beliefs: that children are hardwired to learn. When they're interested in something, learning will take place. Learning is a side effect of playing, pursuing interests and developing passions, and then parents are not teachers. Mm-hmm. So that's very quickly like their main 4 beliefs. But I think those probably reign true for most people when they choose to homeschool or educate kids, is that children are hardwired to learn. Whether you want to be more a part of that process or really like have it be free range, that's up to you and how it would work for your family.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say the same thing as you're reading the beliefs. It's like, I believe that. Yeah, I also believe that. Oh, yeah, I believe that. And I believe that. We don't unschool. So, right. I think, again, those beliefs, you can have those beliefs and still kind of go about it in maybe one of the more structured ways. Mm-hmm. And as Anna said, it really just depends on your own beliefs, as a parent, and, your goals of homeschooling and how you want your day to look like. Or what you want your day to look like, I should say, and just how you want to go about this process.
I think it takes a special type of person or family to unschool, just because, you know, you are putting a lot of faith in the fact that your children are going to kind of come to their educational experiences when they're ready for them, and that you're going, you know, so you really have to release the reins, which I think is hard for a lot of people, definitely too hard for me to do. And I know you've said the same for you, but you know, one thing I do love that they really do hold as such a valuable point of their philosophy is that, you know, learning will happen, what kind of like a means to an end. Like when a child needs to get something, you know, and they need to learn about it, that's when the learning is going to happen. So when you think about it, it's like a baby who, you know, can't talk yet and can't communicate, at some point gets kind of frustrated and starts that process of learning the sounds and learning the words so they can get their needs met. The same idea is held true for a lot of unschooling families, is that when there's a need that arises and a child has an interest and it's like, well, I can't do that unless I learn about this to get there, then that learning is going to take place. And so it's a very authentic way of, you know, approaching the learning process, but not for everybody. I don't personally know any unschooling families 100%. I do know some that teeter between unschooling and the next one, Montessori, but so unschooling, the least restrictive, yeah, no formal curriculums. So if you're planning to unschool, you wouldn't need to listen to our next piece about the curriculums that we've chosen. But yeah, least restrictive is unschooling.
Yeah, and I think with any of these two, you know, like we said, we don't necessarily know anybody that fully unschools, but if it's something that you're really interested in, then reaching out to your homeschool community and asking, does anybody primarily unschool, and getting some feedback, and having that support system, because I mean, again, it does take a certain type of person, I think, to unschool, to be able to relinquish a little bit of that control. So it might be nice to have a community to say, hey, you know, I'm feeling a little nervous because, you know, so-and-so is not maybe showing any interest in reading.
Right.
How did you go about this? What happened? And just having, yeah, again, that support to bounce questions off of. Because I think most parents would want to know that their child is somehow learning. I don't know, maybe not. Maybe that's just the inner teacher.
No, I think
I need to know.
I know. I think of it all the time too with that one, because I think, right, like in terms of like, in terms of, you know, setting goals and meeting benchmarks and things like that, and just that pressure of like, well, if I don't teach them, how are they ever going to learn it? But then again, it's like, well, I don't know. Have I ever just let a kid do it on their own? Like, like, I mean, because maybe they do. And I mean, from what I've read about homeschooling, they do. I haven't seen it personally, but it's like they do. Maybe they're 9 before they pick up a book and have an interest in reading, but they do pick it up. They do start to learn. And so it's like, yeah, I mean, if we let more kids do that, then maybe would we have more like trust that it would happen. But, you know, we're so, especially with us being, you know, former teachers, we're so used to the structure that, yeah, this one for the two of us probably just could not, never happen. But
Nope.
So the next one that is fairly unstructured, Montessori, which is probably a word that you've heard of before. You might have sent your child to a Montessori preschool. I thought that Montessori really was for like early childhood, elementary maybe. I didn't know that you could follow a Montessori schedule all the way through high school, but you can. So I didn't know that about Montessori. But Montessori is developed by an Italian physician named Maria Montessori, and it's been popular all over the world for over 100 years. But the approach really focuses on independent, hands-on learning, thoughtfully prepared environments, and it allows children to grow in all areas of development. And she has 4 main principles of the Montessori education, which are kind of similar to the beliefs of the unschooling, you know, that play is the work. They do have a little bit more of a specified input into the prepared environment. So it's not completely a free-for-all. You have set the stage for certain learning to occur by using certain manipulatives or having certain setups in the space so that you're kind of fostering that, you know, or guiding that learning based off of the way you've set up the room or the space or the center or whatever. Lots of independence though. Maria Montessori has a quote that says, "Never help a child with a task that they feel they can feel like they can succeed in." Meaning let them do it and feel that success, because I know as parents a lot of times we rush to do things for our kids to make things go faster or whatever, but her philosophy is really to not do that. Let them build those, whether it's tying their own shoe or actually completing an assignment, whatever it is. So the Montessori schedule also has a lot of personal care. Like it's really, you know, educating the whole child. So while you're doing academic subjects in a very loose kind of play-based model, a lot of that play is also around self-care things and how you take care of yourself in your environment. So, cooking or cleaning or personal hygiene, things like that. It's all about educating the whole person.
Yeah, which I feel like is a really nice thing for homeschooling, right? Because you have the opportunity to do that. You might have your lesson or your playtime, then okay, now we're going to go into the kitchen and bake, and then now we have to clean up and that personal responsibility. I think, the homeschooling in general lends itself nicely to the Montessori model because there's more opportunities to do that. You don't necessarily have to contrive it like you would at a school. Like, now we have to go to the kitchen when we're not at our house, or now we have to do this. So I think that part is nice.
Yeah. So big on hands-on learning. A lot of these model methods are lots of observation. So that's one thing that differs slightly from the unschooling method, is that those who do Montessori are big observers. The adults are really taking note and observing what the child is doing, how they're interacting with the toys that are in front of them, or the manipulatives, or the book that they're looking at, and they sort of scaffold learning based off of their observations of the child. So when they feel the child's ready for the next step, or a different set of manipulatives that are going to foster, I don't know, adding maybe with a different group of numbers or something, they then make the change to swap out materials for something else. So there's a lot of observation that goes into play when it comes to being a Montessori educator or using a Montessori style.
Is there any guided support? And as far as Montessori, I don't know if you would know this or not, as far as we're noticing that, within the play with these certain materials, a child is maybe struggling.
Yeah.
Would they go in and support and model, or would that just be something oh, okay, tomorrow I'm going to use a different set of manipulatives and see what happens? I guess I don't.
That's a good question. So there are lots of Montessori teachers out there that teach, Montessori in schools, because there are those Montessori schools, and they are trained in a very specific way. So that's a good question. I don't know if you go in and model and then have them kind of, replicate, or if it's really I'm noticing a struggle with this, or not using this, I'm going to switch out. I have a feeling, I do not know this 100%. I have a feeling that it would be more of that. If you put something out that's too hard for them, swap it out, put something different in the next day or whatever, versus modeling, because the idea is you want them to be creative and figure things out. Not that you can't play with them or be a part of it, the play, but I don't know if there's that modeling piece of Montessori. I could be wrong. I'm not a Montessori trained teacher, so if you are a Montessori trained, please throw some feedback in the comments if you personally are a Montessori trained teacher. There are, though, I can't even count how many Montessori books out there about the methods and about how you would do it in a homeschooling setting and within the context of a structured school setting. So definitely do your research for that. They do have a big piece about freedom within limits. So they give lots of freedom, but it's not total freedom like with the unschooling. They do have limits. With and ideas that they'd like to kids to have mastered or kind of played around with. It's very hands off, though. It's a very sort of observation type. It's not like they sit down and be okay, we're working on math today, but they might put out things that are going to lend to counting. It's very specifically geared like that. It's kind of fun to watch. Lots of emphasis on respect. And that kids all learn their own ways and their own needs. I don't know with the early. I do know with the early childhood grades, there isn't a specific curriculum they follow. As they get older, I'd imagine that there is some curriculum that comes into play. But what that looks like, I have not come across a specifically just Montessori upper elementary, middle school text or something. I think it kind of at that point. You might be doing some more of the structured curriculum following it, but it's that big emphasis. Most of the information I find when I look at Montessori comes from the younger, framework. But that idea of playful based learning and about, being exposed to different situations and materials, self-care, all those things is embodied in Montessori, and definitely no rush into any type of, sit down. No rush in that at all. Which leads to the third, and then I'm going to be giving the mic over to Kelley, is Charlotte Mason. And Charlotte Mason is another very well-known British educator. She thought that education should be a lot more than memorization and drills, and for some reason she was one of the first people to state that, which seems like a no-brainer to us in this day and age. But so she really developed a philosophy that surrounded good habits, literature-rich learning, and exposure to great ideas. She was not somebody that thought that they need to be reading in a textbook. Charlotte Mason style is completely against textbooks, and that reading great, rich literature, stories together, experiences, hands-on, the field trips, the learning in action when you're out doing stuff. Those are the best ways to learn. She always used to spout out that education is a discipline. It's a life. It's something that you do from the time you're born till when you die. Like it doesn't just happen within those years of grade school or whatever. It's forever. And in some ways, I really like that idea, and I do try to emulate that with my kids. They see me learning and trying new things.
Right.
Stuff. Living books versus textbooks. So I mentioned that no textbooks, but lots of literature-rich based conversations, reading a lot of oral, reading out loud, reading to each other, and conversations around that, which do happen pretty seamlessly. If you're reading a story together, often you talk about it.
Yeah, right. Yep.
Lots of oral storytelling, very short lessons. If you do sit down lessons, they should be short. They should not be lengthy, and a broad curriculum that you should be able to feel fine pulling from pieces of different things, and bringing it in. It's not one way is the only way. This one curriculum is all we do for math. This one style is all we do for science. That you really want to pull in lots of different things and have your students, lead a lot of that interest. And the formation of good habits. So I think there's a lot of similarities between Charlotte Mason and Montessori. Charlotte Mason just is slightly more structured, whereas they do start to implement curriculum and a little bit more of a schedule of a process, like working on this at this age and so forth. So personally, for me, Charlotte Mason, I remember at the very beginning, was very appealing. I liked a lot about it. And again, just like Montessori, there's tons of books on Charlotte Mason. And lots of specific curriculum online you could find. Like if you typed in homeschooling Charlotte Mason curriculum or text or whatever, you would be inundated with blogs, podcasts, probably books that really outline Charlotte Mason style, but also will give you Charlotte Mason inspired curriculum. So if you're really wanting to I want to hunker down and do this style, you can find everything you need to do this style of homeschooling.
Yeah, and again, I think it's one that lends itself really nicely to homeschooling because you don't have to rely on a textbook, and I mean especially in early elementary, later elementary, there's no need for a textbook, so you should be using books. It keeps kids motivated and keeping those lessons short. All of that stuff lends itself really nicely to the homeschooling model or whatever you're using.
And my favorite thing about Charlotte Mason, I think, is that lifelong learning philosophy. It's not something we do between the ages of 3 and 17 or 3 and 21, whatever it is, and then learning stops. It is a constant. It is what our life is. Our life is learning.
Right.
And I feel like imparting that's one of my hopes with my kids and doing the homeschooling is I want that to be something that they don't just view learning as, we are learning in this moment, because we're in this grade and we have to get. I want them to see it as
generalize it
life is learning. And that's probably one of my favorite pieces about the Charlotte Mason, or at least just that philosophy. That I think a lot of people would agree that that's great for kids to.
For sure. And I think too, again, the homeschool, it lends itself really nicely to that we do learning, it's outside of just our house. It's in the community or, with other people. Whereas, for traditional schooling, if you're in a building, a lot of times kids, they don't generalize those skills to maybe outside of the school. I learn at school. In this building, in these 4 walls, in this classroom, this is where I learn. And so, even if there is homework or whatever, it gets tricky. So I think it's really nice a really nice mantra to have is that learning happens throughout the ages and across all different settings. Moving into our next type of homeschooling structure, moving again from less structured to more structured, would be unit studies. So unit studies are very much what they sound like. It involves finding a topic or a unit that you or hopefully your children are interested in and then using that to guide all of your learning. So how it works, obviously you would start by choosing a theme. You could choose, it could be anything. It could be oceans, it could be space, it could be, a specific type of animal or, maybe animals on the savannah, whatever. Again, ideally, you would want to pick something that your child is really interested in learning about. I think all of these, up until now, all of these types of curriculum, or I should say styles of homeschooling, have really emphasized, capitalizing upon the child's motivation to learn. And unit studies are no different. And then once you pick your theme or your unit, then you find different ways to incorporate all of your subjects, like your language arts, so your reading, your grammar, your writing, math, science, history, art, geography, into that study, into that theme. So for my son, Owen, who is really interested in the American Revolution, we could do a unit study about the American Revolution. So then you would get some books about it, and that would be part of your reading. Or you would, do read aloud. You would then maybe do some writing activities about the American Revolution. Maybe you're doing some nonfiction, or you're doing some fictional writing, and you're pretending that you're a character living in the American Revolution. Obviously, history would definitely be easy to incorporate into something like an American Revolution unit. Some art activities, you could explore art from that time period, or looking at, different paintings from the American Revolution and maybe talking about their significance. Again, depending on the age of your kiddo, that might be above some of where they're at. And then, all of your school subjects, really, this is the point of a unit study, would be centered around this theme. So it's not like, oh, we're only doing this for history, or we're only doing this for reading. No, everything. So like even math, you could look at maps and talk about the direction or how many miles they had to march, and all of that kind of stuff. So some of the pros to using a unit study. Now, I will say for myself, I don't know if I've ever done like a pure unit study, because it does take a little bit of effort, I'm not going to lie, to then plan all of your subjects around this one unit. We've done like science units and like history units, but we haven't necessarily, weaved them into our other subjects. But anyway, so the pros are, you get an opportunity for lots of hands-on activities, crafts, research, field trips, because that would be the other part of it, right? If you're exploring ocean animals, maybe taking a ride to like the aquarium, getting some, information through, the people that work there. Or if you're doing something like history, you could go to museum or museum of science, whatever it might be, whatever your community kind of, lends itself to. So that would enhance your learning, your engagement, your motivation, keeps them interested. Some of the other pros would be, it's flexibility. So the nice thing about a unit study is you can tailor it to different ages. So my kids are both 7, but if you have a kid that's, a 5-year-old and a 10-year-old, a unit study would be really nice because they're learning about the same topic, but you can differentiate it depending on where they're at. So maybe the 10-year-old, is reading to your 5-year-old from a book that's about your unit study of space, and then they're creating, a model of the solar system working together, and that's got, art in it, and it's got, maybe some math as far as like the distances and like scales and all of that kind of stuff. So it definitely lends itself to the different age groups as an umbrella topic that they have different access points to. So considerations to make it a true unit study, you have to make sure that it's incorporated across all of those domains, which can get a little tricky, especially if you've picked like a really niche thing. But I would encourage, if this is something that you're really interested in, just be a little creative about it, and maybe think outside the box, especially I feel like math is one that I like really struggle with. Like, how are we going to get our math in? But math can be, again, like map reading, scales, it could be money, it could be shapes.
Like when you're talking about the American Revolution, like doing math with like a chalkboard or something, like at a table, the way they would have done it. Something like that. You're doing math, but the material you're using is something.
Right. Yeah, that's a good point. Using one of those like an abacus or whatever.
Bringing in some different elements like that. Yeah,
for sure. And then, So the other thing that you would want to make sure that you have you have a learner that, they're really motivated, but that their motivation sort of stays for a little bit longer. You wouldn't necessarily want to do this with somebody who's like, one day they wake up and they're really into space, and then the next day they wake up and they're really into, oceans, or like totally opposing things. So also maybe being a little bit cognizant of how long you're doing your unit study for. If it's a littler child, you would maybe want to keep it really short, maybe like 1 or 2 weeks, and then move on to something else. Keep it fresh, keep them interested. If they're older and it's something they're really passionate about, you could probably push it for several weeks that you're working with this same topic. So just be aware of how your child and how interested or motivated, I guess, they are, would be a big one.
Yeah, and I would say that in schools, unit studies are often done in nurseries, preschools. Used to be kindergarten, but now kindergarten's become a lot more academic than it used to be. But like, if you were to look at an average, preschool class or nursery class, most of the things are unit study based. Like, you might be doing dinosaurs in preschool, and guess what? Like, they're reading dinosaur books, they're doing dinosaur dot pictures or connect the dots, they're counting with little mini dinosaur, figurines, they're role playing with dinosaurs, and they've maybe done their art and built a cave that the dinosaurs might live in. Like, I think unit studies too, if you've got little ones, it's a kind of a fun place to start, because there can be so much play involved with unit studies, and you do see them done. There's a lot of the school of thought on like immersion, units, like ones where you're totally immersed in the topic way, and that it does actually lend itself to really deep learning, and I know for me personally, where I went to school, and they don't do it this way anymore, but where I went to school in elementary, I think I told you, I don't remember so much about first grade, but I do know second, third, and fourth. They did it was kind of the unit study style, where in second grade was oceans. And so, we did lots of other stuff throughout the year, but that was an overarching theme. So I think sometimes, like, even if you're wanting to do a unit study that lasts like a year or even half a year, and it's an overarching theme, you're always going back to it and touching on it throughout the week, because that was a whole year-long thing. And I can remember so much from that second grade year. Third grade was colonial America. Fourth grade was immigration. And then it's funny because, and even fifth grade, it was ancient civilizations. And then after that, they stopped doing it that way. And I don't remember anywhere near as much. So for some, I have sort of a soft spot, even though I don't use unit studies as much yet. I do feel like I'm going to do more of them in the future, but because I know personally, when I was involved in unit studies as a kid, I think that I did retain the information, even if it was a year-long one, even if it wasn't one that, it was super intense every day, was just that, it was worked in throughout the week. I still think, there's something to that, and that's backed up by data that shows that kind of immersion type of study, and over the course of whether you do a couple weeks or a year or something, that being involved in it and learning about it consistently, and that it sticks with you.
Right. If we think about too on like a broader scale, I guess, when you're getting ready to do a career, right? Typically, you have to do some sort of like practicum or intensive. If you're going to be a doctor, you're in there, right? You're in the field, and you're doing all the things that you need to. You're learning on the go. You're learning within whatever your craft or your field is. So I think,
and that's when all the real learning happens, right?
Exactly. Even in school, to become a teacher, I don't really remember.
You learn more your first year probably than you did with all the classes.
Right. So just, I think that's just another point or pro for the unit studies is just that as an adult or as a young or older teenager, you're learning about this career through this immersion model. So just something to keep in mind. Again, I think. Like when you're talking about selecting a theme for unit study, definitely making sure that, obviously your child is interested in that, and that you are as well, because if it's something you really dislike, you're not going to be nearly as motivated to plan and prep and find all of the things. For example, if they pick bugs and bugs just are disgusting to you and you don't want to learn anything about them, it might be harder. And then just, I think one of the trickier things can also be kind of narrowing your scope. So something like oceans, when you're talking about, that feels so big and broad.
I can narrow it for you. It was ocean life. So
ocean life.
I remember it was the animals in the ocean, right? It wasn't like about
you could do like ocean exploration.
That was the year that was the year that I wrote my first like report. It was on the octopus, and but no, you're right. It was ocean life.
Yeah,
so it was.
Maybe being a little thoughtful about, okay, oceans. All right. So yeah, ocean life, ocean exploration. You could do both.
Yeah.
If your child is really interested in oceans, you could do, a couple weeks on ocean life and then some on ocean exploration, and that would go tie together really nicely. Ocean, you could even do maybe like early exploration. Yeah, the tides would be really good. There's so much. But just keeping in mind, like, okay, I'm gonna pick space. That's huge topic, right? Are you doing the planets? Are you doing spatial exploration? Are you doing, in like other non-planet, I don't know what it would be called, but like asteroids or comets or the sun, like just
theories about space.
So much. So, keep that in mind for unit studies. So, all right. So the next one is the one that I sort of use. Although really it's the last one that I think we both use. But this one was this is what I'm going to use for homeschooling. And it's your classical school at home. So tends to be the most structured, right? Resembles a classroom atmosphere as much as you could replicate at home. Kids typically have their own workspace. You might have like your teacher table. Things are sort of set up. Kids have a pretty set schedule. They have assignments that they're going to complete that may or may not be graded. So up until this point, we haven't talked at all about like any sort of assessment or anything. I mean, I think we touched on it with Montessori about observations, but as far as how are we keeping track of progress, that's where this like school at home piece I think really differs, is that you are keeping track of, the progress, assessments,
you might have some
things.
Yeah. I think we do an episode, or we have one planned later that talks a lot about how to assess homeschoolers and ways to do
for sure. Yeah. So stay tuned. So they typically follow a standardized or packaged curriculum. Now, again, that doesn't mean that if you follow a standardized curriculum, you are automatically doing traditional or classical school at home. No, you could get a Charlotte Mason one, and that's fine. Or even Montessori. I'm sure that there's probably some sort of packaged curriculum for Montessori that would send you all of the stuff and maybe give you a little bit of guidance. It's just, this resembles, it's like kind of like you're copying the classroom and pasting it as sort of at home. So, you're designing lessons based on standards or what you want your child to learn. You're dedicating a set time every day for that direct instruction, that explicit practice. You have more of a classic teacher role. So, some of the other methods talk about the parent sort of as a bystander to student learning, especially, like that unschooling or like even the Montessori, you're taking a step back, you're observing. This is a much more direct role as a teacher. And then again, you have a dedicated classroom environment at home. It doesn't have to look exactly like a classroom, right? How hard would that be? But you've got maybe, we do our lessons at the kitchen table, or we do our lessons, in our room or something like that. And this is where, the kids, you come together and do your learning. So I like this model. I started using this model. I've sort of taken, I guess, a little bit of a step back with it, but because it's what I'm comfortable with coming from the classroom. I feel really comfortable, and it's really hard to break that teacher brain of learning occurs. I need to impart wisdom, and then I need to assess this wisdom that I have imparted. So that's why I feel very comfortable with it. I also come from, a different background of, explicit instruction, prompting where needed. But we have started to use some of the other models as well. Just, again, this is the one that I like. I think I also shared, I think maybe in our first episode about how it lends itself to our family structure and our routine. We don't have all day, to just to lend to school at home. We have like designated times, and I feel like we need to fit certain things in. Now, again, that doesn't mean that learning isn't happening outside of those times. It's just for my own, I lay my head at night, I'm like, okay, yes, we learned, we accomplished these these things. That's just personally what I like. Again, my background and type A personality, this is what I'm most comfortable in.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that I tend to pull from this one as well often. And definitely started because it's kind of hard not to. I don't know a homeschooling parent that was a former teacher that didn't probably start off with like, we're going to make a school space and we're going to have like a, and I've seen some online, these beautiful, what are the classrooms at home that are just incredible. And some people are super successful with that. Others, I think, end up feeling a huge pressure to emulate school at home, and you can't do that 100% because you just got your kids in front of you. Like whether it's one child or you have two that are the same age. So it's kind of a little mini class. Or, even if you've got 7 kids, but they're all different ages, how you make that work. And I think there can be a lot of pressure on people to feel like they have to conform to this style. Like, okay, we're doing homeschooling, so it's school, thinking classroom at home, and then try to make it that, and it doesn't work for them. And but there are pieces of it that I know, for me, I like the direct instruction piece, knowing that I've sort of taught something, had my child do some work on it. I feel like I've got that, check that off. Okay. I agree, though. I've also, as the years have gone by, though, I'm starting, because you're taught, as a teacher, part of what you're taught, how students need to learn, how they learn best, how to show student work. All of that is like so ingrained in who you are, and how can you tell that they're comprehending? How can they show their understanding of this? And so, whereas now we're realizing like they don't need to write out the answer to that problem. We can sit on the couch and talk about it because we're homeschooling it, but yet I still will go back to like, okay, but does he have to write it down? Like, do I have to get, because I'm thinking of how it would have been in the classroom. Or, if you're doing something on adjectives and, you're thinking about this convoluted activity that would have been really fun, but you don't have to do it that way at home, even though it was fun in the classroom and it was great in the classroom, it worked in the classroom. Doesn't need to be that way at home. There's, so a lot of the tricks and things that I used to do, I used to love designing curriculum and being a curriculum specialist. That was something I really loved to do, was work with curriculum and make it relevant and fun for the age group. And I would often do that first year, and then I'm like, what am I creating this for? Like a group of 20 kids, and I'm like, I have one right now that's doing this. Like, what? It totally, was like a kick in the face. This is not what you're doing anymore. Like, really. So, but I think it's definitely a model that I think it could be a good starting spot, even if you're not having been a former teacher, because you might be thinking about your experience in school and what the classroom was like. And that's a good place to sit. And I do think a lot of parents share that, like, okay, I feel accomplished. I got this instruction done. My student did a little work. Okay, check off the box or whatever. And then give yourself time. You might find that, yes, that's still important to you, but you have your days where you see it happening other places, and you're not feeling as...
They read a book today, and that was
you're not feeling as restricted to it. But I'm exactly the same way as you. That's always my go-to is, did I get the instruction done? Did I get some kind of, input from my child? Did I get some kind of work produced? Like, whatever. I go to that as well.
Yeah. And then the final sort of homeschooling structure is eclectic, which means it just combines elements from all the various approaches that we've talked about. So it really focuses on the individual child's needs and preferences. And this is really like we said, this is kind of where we're landing, right? Mine might be, if you did like a pie chart, mine might be, 80% traditional, classical, to just see like what your different preferences would be. So, and it really depends on, again, your family, what works for you, your own comfort level, your own background, all of that sort of stuff. I know for me, like I said, it's a mixture of the traditional and classical. Unit studies to an extent. We're not full into the unit studies. A little bit of Charlotte Mason as far as the texts that we're using. And that works for us. And, for some of our other things like science or maybe a little bit of history, we might trend more towards the unschooling, where it's sort of just like, okay, we're at the library and my son is saw a book about the Civil War and pulled that out, and now he's just reading it, and I'm like, cool, that's, and then he just figured it out on his own. I didn't have to directly teach him anything. So it really is just like it's an eclectic, it's a mix of all of these. And I do feel like most of the people that I talk to fall under this type. It's hard. It's hard. Homeschooling is hard in and of itself, but then it's hard to just really like pigeonhole yourself to like, no, we only do Montessori. Like it's okay if you mostly do Montessori, but then you're feeling like, do I even know like where my kid is at? And so I need to pull out like an early reader or something and just have them read aloud, and quickly I see like what are some of the areas that they're struggling in. So I think most people would fall under this eclectic type.
Yeah, because I mean that's part of why so many people choose to homeschool, is that they want to do what's best for their kid, and not usually is one style or one curriculum or the best for your kid. And that's why, unfortunately, when they are in the classroom, as much as teachers or good teachers are taught how to differentiate and all of that stuff, there is still a set schedule, a set benchmark of where they need to be. I mean, there has to be. It's not the teacher's fault. It's the way it's run. But so the beauty of being able to homeschool is for what works for one kid, you learn through manipulative gameplay way better than another one who might like to do everything with I don't know, watercolors, like because they're a painter and they've got to do their math with paint, which I have one of those. So it's just and that's part of the beauty of why we choose to homeschool. So I think it makes sense that a lot of homeschoolers would fall in this eclectic style. I think when you said that pie chart, I love that idea, because I was thinking of my pie chart. So it would be because I am eclectic. Because now I would say a big chunk of mine would, I might say a decent size would be the traditional classic, and then I would say about a decent chunk would be Charlotte Mason style, and then there'd be a smaller chunk, but the unit studies that probably would make up my pie chart the most if I had to think about at least as of right now.
Some unschooling in there too. I think we all sort of do, and as a homeschool, I think you do, because eventually you're not just sitting at the table all day, right?
No,
they're out playing in the yard, and who knows what they're doing, right? Like they're figuring out angles of sticks to make a fort, and like that's some learning, right? They're motivated. So that's how I think of unschooling. It's just sort of like,
it's funny you say that, because the other day, it just made me think of the other day. So we've been doing a very structured unit for science that's on animal adaptations, and it's been going well, and there's been lots of fun art projects that within it. I got this from Teachers Pay Teachers, which we're going to talk about later, I think, before that episode's over. And I love it, and it's been giving us a lot of great stuff. But we, one of the adaptations that we talked about at length was camouflage, and we talked about it, played a game about it, we did our activity with it and everything like that. But then I kind of was like, well, we sort of finished camouflage. We're outside the other day, and I live, in a woodsy area, and so my guys wanted to change or bring out some different clothing, and I was like, well, they're playing in the woods and everything, and they wanted to try out different shirts so to see how well they could camouflage. So they were playing hide and seek, and I was like, okay. And at first I was like, well, and then it became really hard to find them, because of course they brought down like a green or brown clothes or whatever, because they had like a red shirt or a yellow shirt. So then we're playing around with like where they camouflaged best depending on the kind of clothing they were wearing, and then they started doing funny things where they would like pulling branches and like trying to attach it to themselves and try to make themselves really and all of a sudden I'm like, this was totally directed by them. This was not me at all. I thought we had sort of finished the camouflage unit, because I had checked that box, I had done all my instruction on it, and I had done all my little artsy things, which are still good, but it was that time we were just going outside to play, and it turned into, I don't know, an hour of play based off of camouflage and how we camouflage best and how easy it is to do. It was great. And I was thinking of like, okay, so that's sort of like that's just one of those examples when, kids do maybe do and then you think that you give credit for at times, because, I could have thrown the idea of camouflage out there, not even had done all the other things I did, and they just go into that and learn. But when you see those types of things happen, it's just, it's really cool, and it kind of it gives you sometimes, or it gives me sometimes more faith. Like, they are gonna figure things out. They do really figure out more sometimes than you might give them credit for. But
it is really cool too. Like we just started doing for some of our geography. We were just talking about Antarctica and doing a little bit of work with that. But then it's really cool to see them. You introduce something and then they kind of take it and run, or where Owen, I think, was pretending to be an explorer or had his stuffed animals, that these were, going to help him with his exploration. We just did a family trip a little while ago to Alaska, and so we were in, gold rush territory, and the other day they were outside and they were playing gold rush, and they've got the sled and they're dragging it, they got the big rocks, this is our gold and this is our camp, and it's okay, so that's that immersive learning, right? And then just kind of being creative and running with it. So it's just really cool to see that happen. And I think homeschooling definitely lends itself to that more so than your traditional school. Hey, because what your kids are learning and what they have access to, whereas traditional school you might have a general idea, but you don't really know. And then we also don't know. From personal experience, I know that, at school, it's a very regimented curriculum. There isn't a lot of time to be learning about some of this other stuff. So you might read a story, your reader for that week might be about the gold rush, but you're not getting it. It's not the same. It's not the same. No. So, really cool to see all of that.
We should make a list of those kinds of examples, because for people that are like us, as far as either former teachers or ones that are kind of more type A and like to have the instruction is sort of like those moments, I feel like they happen, like the more we give freedom to let that happen, I feel like the more we see it happen, because usually if I back off, stuff like that does happen, but then that former teacher self gets like nope, and I think again a mix is good, but it's the more you hear of examples like that, we should make like a running list, and sort of, so whenever we're feeling like we haven't done enough formal instruction, it's look at all these learning things happening around.
Sure.
So those are our types. Those are the kind of 6. I think it was a total of 6. From the most or the least restrictive to kind of not restricted to the least structured. Thank you. To the most structured, and falling somewhere in between for you or your family. And again, like I said, within each of those categories, there's all different little subsets or nets, and we think about how you want to make it work. I do, once again, just really, rather than just jump into a curriculum, do some work thinking about what you want for your family, what your goals are, how you envision, things working. Because, if you're somebody like you who has, where there's more limited time, it's not like you're home all day, 24 hours a day with your kids, you work, husband works, you guys have a different regimen. So kind of an unschooling, like they're going to learn as they learn, when they learn, wouldn't work, but if you're planning, I don't know, maybe one parent's going to be home with the kids and you're not going to have to be, set to a certain schedule. Maybe you want to try a more loose, approach, but asking yourself questions like that, with yourself, and if you have a partner, with them, to sort of have an idea of what you're wanting your day to look like will help you, I think, ultimately choose the style, or at least the kind of style you might want to start with, before you just jump into picking one randomly that you think sounds good. Think about what you want for yourself and your kids.
Because Montessori might sound really great, right? And then you're like, yes, this is definitely what I want to do. And then you start it and you decide, wow, this is a lot of work, or my child isn't responding to this. They have no interest. I don't know what I'm doing. And I mean, in that case, you kind of have 2 options. You can go back to the drawing board and pick something else and see what works, or reach out to, again, your community and just say, did anybody else have this struggle? Like if you're really, really passionate, which I would caution people to, again, to not be so tied to a type of structure, but certainly if you want to, feel free, because you could reach out to the community and just say, like, did anybody else have this struggle when you first started, doing Montessori or Charlotte Mason or unschooling? And those are really well, I guess you could reach out for help too with like unit studies and traditional school. Like if your kid's you really want to do traditional classic school and your kid basically is not, but not interested. So
the style has to work for your family, and eventually, if you give yourself, I believe if you give yourself the freedom and the time, and you have the patience, you will figure out the blend that works best for you. It just will take time, and it will change. Like we always say, like this was working 2 months ago, it ain't working right now. And then you're kind of, thinking about ways to be the most successful with your kids, but it takes some time to figure out, and it will change, and you have to be open to that change, which is part of it.
Okay, so we've chatted about the types of homeschooling. We gave an overview of each of the different ones. So chances are, unless you're following like a really hardcore true unschooling method, you're probably going to be using some sort of packaged curriculum or maybe designing your own. I would say if you're a first-time homeschooler with very little teaching background, I would say it would be easier to start off with a packaged curriculum and then work your way backwards rather than trying to design it all yourself. But again, feel free to make your own choice. So there are a lot of options out there. There's a lot of options that I know public schools obviously have to choose from, but there's even more so for homeschoolers. Even if you just Google search like homeschool math curriculum, you're going to get so many different ones. So how do you decide on which curriculum is the right fit for you?
Yeah. And we really wish that we could give you one blanket answer, like, this is what you want, like you're looking for this, okay, here's the curriculum for you. But you really can't. So the best we can do is we can give you some considerations, like things you should be thinking about prior to choosing the curriculum. And then we were briefly going to share some of the curriculums that we're either currently working with or ones that we've recommended that you might want to take a look at, because if it sounds like it might be one that you'd be interested in. But again, what works for one person may not work for another, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just the way it is.
It's just a lot of personal preference and a lot of trial and error too. Yeah. You might start off with one and think, again, this is really great. Same thing with your, homeschooling style. I'm going to start off with this. This sounds really great. I really love it. And then you get into it and you're thinking, wow, this isn't practical, or I don't like this about it. It's too much work. It's too much prep. There's not enough work. Yeah. It feels very vague. I don't know what I'm doing. The scope and sequence doesn't make sense. So there's just, So I will say, because of that, you really one of our top considerations would be cost. You do not need to spend an arm and a leg on a curriculum for your homeschooling. And costlier, it's a word, doesn't necessarily equate to better. Right. So really, reaching out to people in your community, asking which curriculums people like, you're going to get so many different answers, and that's okay. And then doing your own research to look into each one and setting a budget, especially if you're, again, if you're a first-time homeschooler of a kindergartner, you do not need to be spending an arm and a leg on any sort of packaged curriculum. And then, as your kids get older, you might have a curriculum that grows with you, or you might have to readjust every year. So really just set a budget for what you think you want to spend. I would say spend less especially if you're a first-time homeschooler, because you don't know if you're going to love it. And now you've spent all of this money on a curriculum that you absolutely hate. Mm-hmm. And if you can, I think we alluded to in one of our other episodes about like a used curriculum sale. So look into your homeschooling community, see if they do anything like that, or see if hey, does anybody have, a sample, or can I borrow, can someone lend me their, reading, whatever, Blossom and Root, curriculum, so I can take a look at it, thumb through it, maybe do a few lessons with my kid and see if this is really a good option. So yeah, you do not need to spend an arm and a leg on a curriculum.
Yeah. The other thing that you should think about is the time investment. So how much time are you wanting to be, spending on these academic subjects? Because curriculums will vary drastically with, they might be very intense, and they're saying that, the writing lesson for your first grader is going to be an hour and 45 minutes. And you're like, whoa, that's not what I want to be doing with my first grader for an hour and 45 minutes of writing. That's too much. Looking at curriculums that are, set up, they often will show an average of how much time should be spent on each lesson or topic or whatnot. Always, obviously, you can feel free to space it out or skip past whatever you want to do. I do think that's where the teaching background is helpful for us, because you might have a little more confidence in doing that and not worrying that you're messing something up. But yeah, the time investment, when you're looking at a curriculum, is there a teacher manual that's 700 pages that you have to get through, or is it pretty much, open and go, or the new teaching, paragraphs are really succinct and really telling you the information you need, or are they giving you sort of like this theory background on this, phonics rule that you don't really need, and now you've been, poring over reading manuals for 2 weeks and you're just totally overwhelmed. I mean, how much material is there that you need to sift through in order to actually get to the lesson? Right. Because it is a time commitment, obviously, for you as a parent doing this, especially, not having a teaching background and really wanting to learn, about the strategies on how to present the material to your child based off of the curriculum, people that developed it. But you don't want to be inundated and feel like all you're doing is reading the teacher manual or the parent manual on how to do it, the time investment of it. So looking at the pacing of how long lessons are, does that align with kind of what you were thinking you wanted to spend on each lesson? And how much does it look, how much time does it look like you'll have to invest, prior to each lesson? Are you going to be reading 40 pages, or are you going to be, do they break it down a little bit easier for you to comprehend?
Right. And then, like, how much time goes into material prep? We were just literally just chatting about this. Yeah. Like, is there a lot of stuff that you need to prepare beforehand, or is it more workbook based, or maybe it's an online, software that you're using? So just be careful about that. If you hate cutting and laminating and all that, then you may need to think about, okay, this curriculum is more of a workbook model, and this feels like something I want to do. Or maybe the materials come pre-packaged and all set, and you don't have to do any of that.
Yeah.
And so then another consideration that I think we've already touched upon, but just your alignment to your own homeschool priorities. Yeah. So do you want a lot of hands-on learning? Do you want it to be fluency based? Do you need it to be colorful, or are you okay with black and white? Do you want it to be, faith based? Do you want like a big hands-on learning component? So really thinking about, like, what do I want my homeschooling to look like for my child or children, and then you'll be able to narrow it down, I think, a little bit more, because some curriculums are going to be automatic no's if you're looking for a faith-based one, or if you're looking for something that's really hands-on, there's going to be several that you can just kind of cross right off the list, like this has no hands-on component whatsoever.
Making a list of the things that you want out of your curriculum. That's a great place to start. And I don't think you'll ever find a perfect match. I haven't yet. I don't know if you have, but and to be fair, because I've said this to other people who had no idea, they thought, oh, well, schools just use the same curriculum every year. No. So if you have to switch curriculums at some point, whether you don't even finish the year and you switch, like, that's okay. Your child is not going to be totally, you're not going to be screwing them over by not like staying with the same curriculum if it's not working. Schools change curriculums all the time. I remember working at one school where I think it was the 7 years that I was there, I think the math curriculum changed 5 times. It's not like schools don't change curriculums too. They do. So feel free to change it if it's not working. And the point that you mentioned about looking for used curriculum sales, you can often find teacher manuals for sure used on eBay or Facebook or whatever. Workbooks sometimes it's harder to find used. New is often the way you need to go for those, but also looking to the website and seeing if they offer free samples that you can download and look at ahead of time, which are good. But even with those, there is going to be, like you said, there's going to be just some trial and error that you need to, do with your kids, and thinking of the styles that you like. I think one thing that is important that maybe a non-teacher, wouldn't know about, but we've talked about with curriculums, that there's the teach to mastery curriculums and then the ones that are not teach to mastery, and that a lot of times in schools you find not the teach to mastery programs because they end up reviewing concepts for multiple years in a row, and there is a philosophy behind why they do that, that repeated exposure to it in grade 1 and grade 2 and grade 3 versus just spending a lot of time on it in grade 1 and then not having to review it in grade 2 or grade 3. They're two different approaches. Not one is better than the other, but you definitely might have a preference as the parent that's doing the instruction. So for me, when I taught in schools, it was rare that we had teach to mastery programs. I think most of what I taught was that repeated exposure type. So I've seen that. I've used it. It's fine. I personally like teach to mastery programs. And when I had a little more autonomy over, I remember reading a few years in a row when I was a third grade teacher, using more teach to mastery programs and reading. I saw big benefits for it with my students, and definitely because I like that style. I think I teach that style better just because I like it. So a teach to mastery would probably, your curriculum might have fewer concepts in it, but your child, the goal is that they will really understand it and not need to be re-exposed to it later on. Or if they do have to be re-exposed, as a quick review. It's not something that needs to be retaught. So the curriculums that I'm sharing today are teach to mastery. It happens to be the ones that I personally like teaching the best. But that's something you might want to look into. And a lot of websites, they'll in their explanation of their curriculums, they'll say this is a teach to mastery. So that sometimes is just something to think about if, that may not resonate with you at all, but if it does, that's something to think about. Two different styles for what you're doing.
Yeah.
So we were basically going to review, I wouldn't say either of us are set on a like social studies or science curriculum, but we do have recommendations for definitely those, English language arts areas, and math were kind of the main ones that we were going to talk about. So you have 2 7-year-olds. I have a 7 and a 5-year-old. So we're doing we're definitely covering reading, writing, math. And I'm doing that with 2 different grade levels. And I am using the same curriculum for both of them. So starting about, why don't we start with reading?
Yeah, reading. Okay. Yeah.
So I'm currently using a program that's called All About Reading. It's a Orton Gillingham based phonics program. It was created by Maria Rappel, or Rappel, one or the other. And I like it because it is, I like it for a lot of reasons, but it is a teach to mastery program. So this is an example of a teacher manual, and I'll put the picture in the corner so you can see it while I'm not talking about it. But it comes with a teacher manual, comes with a workbook. It comes with other options on the website so that you can get letter cards, letter tiles, an online component. And this is also where you have to look at the price getting jacked up, because it's not a cheap curriculum, I will say that. However, for me, it's definitely worth the money. And you can play around with what added components you want or you need. You may just need the teacher manual and the workbook, and you may not need any of the other stuff. That's kind of up to you. So it comes with readers as well. There's direct instruction that you do with your child. Then there's activities for them to complete, and then there's readers that they read from that go with the direct lesson. I really do like it. I think that it's very comprehensive. It's very fun. It's very colorful. There's a lot of nice, big, bold print in it, which was important for me because I have 2 learners that have eye issues. And so that was an important piece in curriculum that I found, ones that had a lot of colors, a lot of black on white print. It's not all, print on colored backgrounds. It's harder for my guys to read. So that was important. And very game based, and like I said, teach to mastery. So that is what I use for reading.
You know what might be helpful too, as we're talking, maybe we should just link like something in the comments or whatever about like the types of learning, the types of learning. Like,
for learning.
I'm a kinesthetic learner, or I'm a visual learner. So people will say that, right, when you're an adult. Oh, I'm a visual learner. Yeah. It's like, well, what does that mean? I think we're all pretty familiar. Well, I need to see it. Okay. Well, some people are like kinesthetic learners, which means that they need to use their body, right, to do something while they're learning information. So there's definitely, I can't remember all of them, but some of them are just like, okay, show me, right, a visual learner. They need to experience that themselves, or they just need to jump in and try it, learn on the go. Give me the stuff. I don't want to watch you do it. Give it to me. I'll do it.
Right.
So there's different types of learning. That's something that I do remember from like, teaching school, is that there are. And when you're differentiating, it's really good practice to have kids learn in different ways so that they can learn what their style of learning is. But just, having the opportunity to expose them to different ways of learning this material is going to be beneficial, right?
And my last little quick thing about reading and writing that I use is an old curriculum, but it's an oldie but goodie is what I say, which is Explode the Code by Nancy Hall and Rena Price, which is an incredibly simple, it's a workbook. There is a teacher manual. It comes in numbers, but also halves for review. So you might have book 1, book 1.5, book 2, book 2.5. You don't have to do the halves if you don't want to. They're kind of extra review, but they are phenomenal, very simple, black and white, but just very concise units on a certain spelling skill, and it's great practice. They're also repetitive in nature, so like each unit is the same exercises repeated but with the different rule. And so, for example, my son will be able to take the packet. I copy them and make them into little packets for each unit, but he'll take the packet and just go and do it. That's a very independent thing for him because he's been doing them for so long. He knows what the exercises are. It's just based off of whatever the new rule is. I haven't met anybody that uses Explode the Code that hasn't really liked it. It's been around a long time, but it's just one of those ones that oldie but goodie. It's a great one. So I'll try to put some pictures of what it looks like, what the units look like, what the exercises look like on the screen for you to take a look at. And I think we'll probably link all of the curriculum as well in the show notes so you can look at it. But so I use sort of right now So I'm all over the place. I'm using sort of all about reading, but it has two parts, and then explode the code. And for me, that works. I'm good at piecing together the different parts and sort of figuring out how it all webs and works together. Not every parent wants to do that, and that's totally fine. So if you're wanting one thing all right in front of you, Kelley has pros and cons to her curriculum as well that she's going to share for reading and writing.
Okay. So yes, my English language arts, because that's what I'm going to call it, curriculum is all in one. And I use a curriculum called PINWHEELS, which is developed by a company called Rooted in Language. And Rooted in Language provides a truly comprehensive approach in developing reading and writing skills, adhering to evidence-based best practices from the science of reading, which I love all of that. Evidence-based, science of reading, all of that I love. I will say, so I'm going to talk about it. When they say comprehensive, they mean comprehensive. So it's not just phonics, right? There's phonics, phonological awareness, there's writing, there's letter formation, there's grammar, there's reading. So there's so much. And I do really appreciate that it is all in one. But it can be very overwhelming, especially to someone who maybe doesn't have the educational background. So unlike Anna's that come in like the bound book, PINWHEELS you buy, and you can choose to print it on your own, or you can choose to buy it, and then for an additional cost, they have like a printer that they work with that then will print it and bind it in like the rings, whatever those are called, for you. I chose to print it. Well, I chose to have my husband print it and assemble it all in binders. And we've been using PINWHEELS since the kids were in kindergarten. We started with year one. Year one and year two are both split into like part one and part two. And now they're going, I guess, technically second grade. And we're just almost done with year two, part one. I think it's year two. Well, it says year two, level 3, but they mean, it's the first one. Year two, level 3, year two, level 4, year one, level 1, year one. Yeah. So it's taken us a little bit. Number one, because, we're not doing school for 8 hours a day. And number two, because, it's very comprehensive. So this is what it looks like. And it's cute because it has the pinwheels, right? So the idea is that like each part of the pinwheel is a different part of their curriculum. So like I said, phonics, spelling, games, grammar, word study, handwriting, so much. So when I use PINWHEELS, I primarily, and maybe I'll take a picture of this, I'll primarily focus on, they have this nice little spot right here where they lay out sort of the unit. So they're broken down into units. So this says Unit 1 plan, and then these are all of the pieces that you might get to that week or not. So again, you've got your phonics and your spelling. You've got your word study, any caution or common words, which are kind of what they call like what we would sort of say are sight words, but there's nuances for what constitutes as a caution word and what constitutes as a common word. Phonological processing, grammar and mechanics, reading and comprehension, writing and editing. And then the one thing that I really actually like about PINWHEELS is that integrated within the curriculum, they have these cute little celebrations where it's like built in that they can like, let's have a PINWHEELS party and like here's the invitation and invite who you want. And sometimes like one time we made like a suffix crown where we like wrote the words with the suffixes and then they wore it and we had like a snack. They've done like ants on a log with celery and peanut butter with like raisins after, I don't remember what we had done for that. And then there's also pages in here where like it literally says after certain units, take a breath. Like everybody take a breath because this is a lot of information that's being taught to the kids. The other part that I really like about it is the kids create these LA binders where they put in certain work that they've done, but also we make a lot of like pages with different rules. So we have different sections. In our phonics and spelling, we have a page for every letter of the alphabet that we did where they like colored it and like drew and stuff. And then, any blends that we've done or vowel teams. in grammar, we have some more, we have like a commas page, we have like a ellipsis page, we have like, so it's a living thing, and if we need to, we can go back and look at the pages that we've done. We have a couple of working things in there, like we have a plot arc, which talks about the parts of a story. So it's like a file folder that we made that has, the characters, the setting. And so when we read, now that we're getting into some stories that are a little bit lengthier, who are the characters, what's the setting, what's the problem, what's the solution, how did they feel about it? We've also got like our vowel charts where we keep our vowels. So there is so much. There's so much. And also, as Anna was saying with hers, it is also multi-sensory. So you've got letter tiles. We've done parts before where we've done like breaking apart the words into sounds, and they have to like touch their head, touch their shoulders, touch their waist, so if it's like cup, it would be like up. Yeah. And like touching each part of your body for the sounds. We've done like syllable hop, where you like make hopscotch and then you jump how many syllables are in it. Yeah. So for some stuff, and this is, they say it's really nice for kids that might have like a diagnosis of dyslexia or have struggled before with other reading curriculums and they're just not picking it up. There's a lot they talk about. So there's the unit plan, but then there's also like a lot about why you teach, which is interesting because you were saying like you don't want to be sitting there reading pages and pages of the teacher's manual.
Well, not everybody wants to.
No, but I don't really. I love, if anybody from PINWHEELS or Rooted in Languages brothers watch it, I love it. Yeah. I do. I don't read any of this, right? Like I don't. I think it's great for somebody who maybe doesn't have an educational background, who is like really into like why am I teaching this? Yeah. But I don't. And then it is scripted. There's some stuff they do highlight it in yellow. Oh, we should probably just put a picture up, but because you definitely can't see that. Yeah. But like it said, educator says, and then literally what you said, like, and then there's different examples of all sorts of stuff. So I do really like, and again, it doesn't. This is it. PINWHEELS. This is the teacher manual. It comes with like a workbook for the kids. It comes with appendices, different sections of appendices. It's got your reading kit A, which is where a lot of your word lists live, or your sentences. Then it's got reading kit B, which has all of your stories or your books. Those ones, again, you have to
print out all of that as well.
You have to print it all out. Yeah. So that is the other thing. Like if you don't know somebody that works somewhere with an industrial printer, copier, then the cost is going to be a little bit more because either you're printing it all yourself, or you are you have to go to Staples or use their company to do it. But so that is definitely a con. The other thing is you could just kind of have it live electronically on like a tablet or something, like the teacher manual. You don't have to print the teacher's manual. I like a teacher's manual. I do. I can't be scrolling, I definitely can't be scrolling on my phone and then on the computer. So you could print as you go. I printed everything. Not because I like to waste paper, but just because I like to have it. And when I'm planning and prepping, I don't have to then go into the document and find it. I know I just have to go to the binder that says, Owen, reading kit A, and then pull out the pages that I need. It's just a time thing for me. Yeah. But you don't have to. And some units we use more than others. And that's where the advantage of being a teacher comes into play, to just be like, okay, there's this memory game. But we don't need to play memory with caution and common words. These kids know the caution and common word. We don't. We could. It would be, they wouldn't dislike it. But as far as like a benefit, it's not. We're not getting really a whole lot out of it other than they're playing a game. Yeah. So yes, PINWHEELS, they're in the process. I will say at this point, it's September. So they're planning on kind of rehashing some things. And so their online store is only going to be available, I think, until March or April of 2026. So if this is something that you're really interested in, definitely hop on their website. They have some free stuff that you can download, the scope and sequence. That was what I sort of used. It breaks down like what they learn in year 1, what they learn in year 2. And then after that, they have some other supplemental stuff, which actually I have to email them and ask, like, we did year 1 and year 2. Now what? Like, what should I do next?
Do you know how high the it goes up? Like how many levels it goes?
So as far as PINWHEELS is your early literacy curriculum. So it's just year 1 and year 2.
Okay.
So after year 2, you should feel pretty secure as far as your early literacy skills. And then from there, I think there's the more advanced spelling. There's some more stuff, I think, with like some poetry. I have to actually like really, they have so much on their website. And again, I love that it's evidence-based. I love that it's the multi-sensory. For a while, just again, not to like keep going down the rabbit hole as far as like teaching stuff, but like one of the things that I really liked about it for phonological processing were these things called sound blocks, and they're just colored tiles. And for those of you who aren't aware, like phonological processing is working with the sounds, but apart from the letters.
Right.
So you just give them a word, you just say it, and then based on what they hear, then they you pull the sound tiles for like how many sounds that they hear. And it's really tricky to do it without the letters, but it shows like if they can't even do that, then now we're here at this it's a phonological processing error. We're not even introducing the letters yet. So
it's like if you said cat and you didn't have like CAT out for them to pull, you just had different colors, but they could pick 3 colors. Right. So they knew there was 3 sounds it made, not the letters, but the sound.
Yeah, it's just the sound.
Yeah, it's a very useful tool.
It is. Yeah, when they talk about like push and pull, so like pull your letters down, right?
Yeah.
And then just like, with the sound blocks, like changing, okay, you've got cap or cat, now change it to cap. And like which part of the sound blocks are you changing? What part of the sound? Right. So it's like a visual. You can do it orally, and a lot of kids can. We've also done a lot of like phonological stuff as like a warm-up here and there. But, for kids, again, as we talked about later, if they're like a kinesthetic learner or a visual learner, they need those sound blocks to be able to see that like this sound is represented by this red tile and this sound is represented by an absence of the letters, because sometimes that can get confusing, right? Okay, so yes, that's my big long diatribe about PINWHEELS. I like it. I really do. I actually don't recommend it a lot anymore, only because I do feel like it is a little overwhelming. If you feel like you really are okay with a really comprehensive reading packaged curriculum, I would recommend it. Just know that it can be a little tricky sometimes to navigate. There might be stuff in there that you may or may not need to use. If you're new to it and new to education or teaching in general, I would say, and your child is young, or if they've historically struggled with another reading curriculum, I would say adhere to this pretty strictly. If your child is making a lot of really good progress, and they say that in there, like if your child is struggling, here's what you need to do. If your child is more advanced and here's what you need to go faster. You could do it at a faster pace. So yeah, really like PINWHEELS.
PINWHEELS, yes.
Yes.
I know it's a shame that they're not going to be making it.
I know. I think it's just, I think a lot of it probably just has to do with cost and just marketability. I don't know. It definitely could work in a classroom. It's not necessarily, I think, marketed for a classroom, but it could. And I think it's probably just, not maybe doing as well as one hopes. But
there are a lot of competing curriculums out there that are trying to get homeschoolers' attention, and with more parents homeschooling than I think ever before. I mean, there's definitely more and more competition among these curriculums. All right. Okay. Well, the other topic we thought that we'd share is what we're using for math, which we both have math curriculums that we like. So I'm using Math with Confidence by Kate Snow, who was a math educator and a now homeschooling mom. This is the second grade book. I'll add a picture to see it. It's a teach to mastery curriculum as well. It's very simple. It's actually incredibly affordable too, which I also love because I am spending a little bit more on the reading and writing curriculum. So the price point of it, I think, is fabulous. It comes with a teacher manual and workbook. I don't think that you need to buy anything else. I don't believe so. And what's really nice is that the teacher manual is very clear. There, it tells you you can read almost like a script from it if you want to, but you can also just read the what the main point is for the next thing. Lots of games in it. The workbook itself, I think, is really fun. It's colorful, and it also, again, for me, someone that was looking for that bigger print and bolder type for my sort of vision impaired learners, this curriculum has bigger font and more bold font, which is really helpful for my guys when they're seeing it. I'm not having to blow it up for them, but I do like it. It's split up into units. There's a lot of practice and mastery of basic addition and subtraction skills. It builds upon each skill that you learn, which I think a lot of math curriculums do that. I do like how many games are offered in the program and how many additional, like if you're working on a topic that's really your kid's struggling with it, they give so many ideas of other ways that you could play around with the concept. All of our reading does that too, which I really like. And so I'm never at a loss for more ways of accessing the information in a different way, or presenting it in a different way, or playing around with it in a different way. And I tend to rip out the pages, and again, I kind of staple them by unit, and so we work on ones as we go. And with any math curriculum, though, I would say if you're doing any additional, so we use the workbook almost every day, but seasonally, for example, like Halloween, there are so many fun math, like either games or even worksheets or things like that you might want to do. So I won't sit down if it's like a page and there's half of it is a review of addition facts to 20, but we just did this math game that had addition facts to 20. I might just cross that out and not have not do that, because we just did it in another format. So I have had parents say, like, oh, do I have to do every piece of every worksheet? And I said, well, no, especially if you're doing it in another way. You could always leave it for repractice another time if you want, but you don't have to. I also split up the lessons a lot more than the teacher manual suggests. Their math lessons are a little bit longer than my child would like to sit for, and that's fine. So we tend to just split up the lessons that they would say would be one lesson. I often tend to do in 2 mornings. But we're moving along, pretty quickly with it. I've used it for kindergarten, first grade, and now second grade. So nice. I'm pretty happy with it so far, and planning to stay with it for a while. And like I said, it's very. I will say it's a great. It's a great price. Yeah, as far as homeschooling.
I like that it's colorful. I do like that the pages are colorful.
I do like it. It is colorful. And each unit is different color. There's lots of games. And even some of the games that are fun too is like, because they're moving pieces or whatever, like I'll end up, my kindergartner will play the game with me, and my second grader, he may not be doing solving the problem, but he's moving the piece. So we're all kind of playing it together. And so he might not be doing the subtraction problem, but he'll be like, oh, it's 20 and 7. And then my other son, Lee, will have to do the subtraction. Or whatever. Like it's, it does kind of lend itself to that, which is fun.
That is nice.
And so I do. I'm a fan. So math with confidence for me.
Yep. Okay. All right. So mine is going to look very plain next to Anna's beautiful math with confidence. So I use a curriculum called Math UC. And I looked into a couple of different math curriculums. I landed on this one. My number one reason, and I don't have them with me, but we can put a picture, are because of the manipulatives that it comes with. So if you attended public school, I feel like at any point you probably are familiar with some base 10 blocks. So you've got your little 1 cube, you've got your 10 rod, and you've got your hundreds block. And so these manipulatives look just like that, except there's not just a 1, a 10, and a hundreds. There's a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, a 7, an 8, a 9, and a 10, and then a hundreds. And all of the learning that you do with Math UC is with these manipulatives, or at least to start it is, which is really nice because again, it gives that visual, hands-on component to some of these trickier math skills. So it follows a very similar scope and sequence that, you start off with like basic numbers and kind of things like that, and then you get into, your addition within 10, and then we just finished the book, the second book, Alpha, which is all about single digit addition and subtraction. And really, when they say single digit addition and subtraction, I don't know that there's anything else in here other than that. And it's very, regimented as far as the structure. Like first you're adding this and then you're adding that. And there definitely is a method to how they introduce each sort of addition fact or subtraction fact. But it is a lot of, so there's the visual piece, and then that lends itself to some mental math, which I'm a big fan of. Eventually the manipulatives, you can't carry them around in your pocket. You just either have to know the fact, so it's fluency based, or you have to have a strategy for figuring it out, which I really like. So, and the nice thing about Matthew C is that it does carry you all the way up to, that's not going to have it. This is the teacher's manual. I
will say I use Matthew C manipulatives. I bought them. Yeah. So if you, I don't care what math program you use, I would recommend buying the Matthew C blocks, because regardless, they are an unbelievably amazing tool. I've never seen a math program that
they're so good.
Such good manipulatives. I wish I had had those. When I taught math, it was those the ones, the 10s, and the 100s. I would have loved to have had the breakdown the way they've done.
Yep. And so you probably won't be able to see it too well, but like along the side here, you've got, it goes all the way up to calculus with Matthew C, and they use the blocks up in, when you're learning about calculus. So the manipulatives you buy once, and then that's it. They carry you through. And then each year you have to buy, the next, whatever the next one. So we finished alpha, now we'll do beta. And after that is gamma and delta, epsilon, all that kind of stuff. So, and again, it could take you a year. It might take you a little bit longer. It really just depends. And it tells you what the skills are. And again, it's mastery based, so they can start at any level. If you've started with a different math curriculum and it's not really working out for you, you can always jump to Matthew C and just they have online like a placement test, and it'll ask you some questions about like, where's your child at? And then they'll spit out like a recommendation of where to start. So I use this. There's also a part of me though that I use this as my primary math curriculum, but then there's also a part of me that will look at the math standards for whatever grade my kids are in and say like, well, in this book of Matthew C, we didn't cover this. And this is a standard, and this is just like former teacher, this is first grade standard, and to, feel okay about what we're doing, I want to make sure that we're hitting all the standards. So if Matthew C didn't have it, then I'll jump on Teachers Pay Teachers, or which is a lovely website.
You do not need to be a teacher to have access. You just need you just need an email.
Just an email. You don't have to pay for like a subscription.
You pay for the things that you buy unless you find something that's a free resource, which you can easily go to the top and select filter for the age or the grade level and hit free if you just want to have free, or you can even say like things under 5 if you don't want to spend it, whatever. And if you could probably never even buy a curriculum and just buy things off teachers. Yeah. You probably could. But it is, it's an unbelievable website and resource. I a lot of times at night will go on like the free, and then I'll type in something like, I don't know, Halloween second grade math pages. And that's what I find this really fun thing I did with my son the other day. But it's an unbelievably great resource. So if you were looking for a topic, or something wasn't covered well enough in the book, or even if you're reading a book with your children and they love it, like Charlotte's Web, and you want to find some, unit study to do on that book, you can go type in Charlotte's Web and put the age, like the grade, and that you will be hit with a ton of really great reviews. There are better ones. I think most of them are pretty good. I mean, I'd say it's rare. I mean, anybody can post anybody who has a website and is part of Teachers Pay Teachers can post material, but I think it's rare you come across something that's pretty blah. I mean, it also is, there's ratings under each one, kind of like a seller on eBay. So you can see, and you can actually see ones that are have been bought and used often, and sometimes you can even see the preview of the material and stuff. But I'm on that every other day. Looking at, even if I'm not, just because I'm curious and I want to
see what's out there. So for example, like we took a break from alpha when we finished, and I was like, it's really important. I really want my kids to do money. Like that's a thing. And I'm sure, I don't know if in beta they do money. They might. I don't know exactly, but I just was like, I want to take a break from this, because the workbook pages are like, I pull them out, but they are sort of like pretty blah. They're not super colorful
Yeah.
like yours. It's very like,
Yeah.
here are the facts. There is a lot, again, it's teach to mastery. So there's a lot of repeated practice. The first like 3 workbook pages are all about the skill that they just learned. And then the other, 3 or 4 pages are just like a review, which is also kind of nice. But I wanted to take a break from this. So I just found like a 2nd grade money unit on there, and that's what we're doing right now. And then when we're done with that, then we'll go to beta and we'll work on multi-digit addition and subtraction.
Yeah.
The other thing, and again, not to go down too far with the rabbit hole, the other thing I like about Math UC is that they are following the standards to an extent, but they're also sort of like pushing. So when we did addition within 10, they didn't wait to talk about adding hundreds. Like just 300 plus 500. Like if you know what 3 units plus 5 units is, or 3 tens plus 5 tens, then you can figure out what 300 versus 5. It emphasizes place value very early on, which I just think is so important, because that's where kids fall apart in their multi-digit addition and subtraction, is this inability to understand place value. So I really liked that. Overall, I do like it. The instruction manual sometimes leaves a little bit to be desired. They do have like lesson by lesson videos and like a little online component that you can use. I don't usually use it, and maybe that's why I feel like the teacher's manual, it's kind of just like, here's the skill, a couple of examples, and then okay, that's it, like move on to the next thing. So it's only like maybe 1 or 2 pages per like unit, but there's lots of opportunity for kids to practice it.
Yeah.
But
so that, and I think math is one of those things too that is of note as a former teacher. I mean, I don't know any year that I ever got through the entire math curriculum. Like you're always choosing chapters or skipping chapters rather that you don't have time for in the math period. So I think, like, for example, the 1st grade book, that unit that I did with Leo, I think we finished at the end of the summer, because we kind of kept going, because I did do every one with him. And I remember thinking, like, had it been, this type of curriculum during the school year, we probably would have skipped the chapter on, I think money used to be skipped a lot in 1st grade. The one on shapes and geometry was skipped often, because they have to prioritize the ones that are most important for them to be successful in the next grade, and they can pull that in at another time. And so I like that about it, with the homeschooling, especially with the math. I don't know, sometimes I feel like math might take you longer to complete, because you actually are completing the whole thing. And I just think for those who haven't been in education, it's very, very common for math, like in math, for you not to get through, teachers to get through the whole book. And in fact, they don't even plan on getting through the whole book. They specifically are like, we don't do chapter 7, we don't do chapter 9, we don't do chapter 11, because there's one they cannot get through.
Or they're like, oh, that happens in 3rd grade. Because again, it's like, I swear, like these curriculum designers and standards, people who write the standards and people who write the curriculum are not on the same page, because it's like, well, that's not a 2nd grade standard, that's a 3rd grade standard, they'll get to that then, but yet it's in the 2nd grade math book. So I mean, maybe they're better now. It's been a little bit since I've been in the classroom, but that always made me sort of question things a little bit.
Or I feel like I remember very succinctly there being this like major issue when I was teaching with money, because money was a chapter that was often skipped, and the thought was that, well, money is something that often kids figure out with their parents, because like you use money to buy things, and they make an allowance, and they see change being made at stores. Like, money is something they have access to, and so it tends to be something they learn without too much instruction at school. Until people started putting together, like, well, a lot of people don't use money anymore. It's all Apple Pay or credit cards. And so then there was all of a sudden this like gap where for so many years students, the chapter on money, because I think money is in most math books that I've seen from grades 1 to 5, usually a unit on money at some point. And it was often one that was left out, because it was like, well, if we have time to get to it, great, but it's one they'll figure out, they'll learn. But it was like, but they aren't. That's the problem. So, same thing. Time was another one that used to not always be explicitly taught. It was often skipped. And then all of a sudden you've got, 5th graders who can't read the regular, analog clock, because everything, the digital clocks are all that they have now. And so it's not a skill that everyone's picking up on in money. So now they were kind of going back, and it was like, no, we got to throw in that money unit in 1st grade. We got to throw in that clock unit in 3rd grade, because they aren't picking up the way that our world is now. They're not having access to it the same way. So I remember thinking that was interesting, that they needed to sort of reassess which chapters they were skipping.
Well, and it's interesting too, because when I was in Fall River, we would do in 4th and 5th grade, I think it was, well, 4th grade too, 4th and 5th, they would do fractions. And for any of you who are new to like new math or whatever, I like fractions teaching it now because they have different models. So they have like, for talking about adding and subtracting fractions or just comparing fractions, they have the money model and then they have clock model. And it's so interesting because it's like with money model, you have to have the understanding of coins, right? Yeah, like pennies and, you know, what's 100 or like, so 1/5 of a dollar is how much money, what's a penny, you know, so there's like a map, but you have to you have to have a foundation in money. And then clock, same thing. Yeah. You know, you, as far as comparing, okay, so if you had like a 1/5 versus a 1/2, and then if you don't know what like 1/5 of an hour is, and like you don't know how to read the analog clock, that's not going to help you at all. So it was a lot of working with comparing and adding fractions using these models as like a way in for kids to kind of understand it a little bit more. But again, if you don't have, you have to have deficits and then skip counting too. Like if you can't skip count, then you can't tell time on the clock and all that kind of stuff. Or even with money, you know, if you can't skip count by 5s and 10s, you're not going to be able to add money. And actually, so just one quick bit, like my daughter, she takes a dance class, and last year the girls that she was in with, they love to buy their snacks, right? So their parents would send them with money, and then they'd get the snacks and they'd have to pay the late. And there were some girls she was in with, her hip hop group is a little older, and these were girls that were in 4th and 5th grade, and they would be telling them, okay, you owe this much, and they just put their money down. And have no idea. Like, they don't know how to count the money that's in front of them. And the teacher, well, no, you need another 25 cents. No, that's a nickel. Like, you need another 25 cents. And they're just like, I don't know. So like Grace got really into wanting to buy her snack. And so every time she struggled a little bit, I would be sitting, you know, kind of right there, and I would just say like, oh well, we haven't done money yet, but we just covered pennies and dimes and nickels and all that kind of quarters. And so now I'm like, all right, when you go to buy your snack, now you're going to be good. You're going to know what each one of those are, and she's going to tell you, and you're going to be able to figure out to give, you know, because she'd be like, oh, I got a bunch of coins. Right. And she got like 2 dimes and a penny, and she thinks that she's rich. And You're actually not. But okay. We haven't gotten to money yet, but now we have. So I'm like looking forward to her going and buying her snack. But anyway, that's
it's an interesting thing because math more so than I feel like some of the other subjects when there can be big gaps that you don't can't cover at times, and then before you know it, the kid has never, and just certain things that wouldn't back in the day when we didn't have the credit cards and all that stuff. I mean, kids probably did learn about it more at home because that was all that their parents were using. Now it's not. Where before we had the digital clock, a lot of them learned how to because that's how they had to figure out how to tell time, and they might have learned that at home. But now it's a different it's a different ballgame. So all right. So those are our curriculums. Teachers Pay Teachers. We cannot say enough positive things about. There's other sites, you know, Pinterest. You can look for especially like crafts or just fun activities. There's bloggers that are out there.
The Measured Mom is a good one.
The Measured Mom. The
This Reading Mama is another one.
The Moffitt Girls is one of them. But we'll put a few of our favorites again in the show notes along with links to the curriculum that we've shared so that you can check some of them out. But there's so much great stuff out there. I mean, so much. And I would say, you know, for any homeschooler that's starting, especially if you've got little ones, you know, no rush. No rush to jump into formal curriculum unless, you know, you feel like your child's ready for it or you want to dabble into it or whatever. I mean, my son Owen, who's kind of on the cusp, he turned 5, but technically he would miss the cutoff for kindergarten. But we're doing kindergarten work because that's kind of what he's ready for. But, you know, for example, the workbook, we're using the Math with Confidence workbook. And so, you know, and he's doing great with it. But, you know, I might take days off and he's making numbers in sand because, you know, like we're just, there's no rush. There's just, you know, there's no rush. And sometimes people think you got to dive into curriculum. I'm not on social media anymore, but I remember seeing posts from homeschooling moms that were really just, you know, should I be worried? My you know, 5-year-old can't read yet, and I was just like, oh my gosh, or my 3-year-old can't write their letters yet, and I'm like, oh, Oh, of course not.
Yeah,
You know,
right,
it's
right,
like, are you doing any? I mean, the research is out there. I really hope that they look. I mean, but the pressure on kids to do so much so quick, so early is just. I think we see that more now than ever, and it just you don't need to be holding yourself to this the same standard as what they're doing in the classroom, and I mean, that's part of the beauty of why you took them out of the classroom. So don't be comparing them to what's happening inside the classroom. As hard as that might be for some people. To do. So, today we have covered a lot. So deciding on the type of homeschool structure that works best for you and your family, it's going to take time. There's no quick way around it. Maybe you'll get lucky in the first curriculum you like. That would be wonderful.
Yeah.
But be open, be flexible, be curious, and be patient. Be patient. Make changes when you need, swap curriculums. And if all else fails, if you spend a day reading with your kids, that's a successful homeschooling day.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. So we hope that this episode has really provided some guidance while you consider your own homeschooling style, kinds of curriculum you might choose going forward. Remember that you set the expectations for what success looks like. And, you just said it. Try not to compare, right? What success at your house looks like, what it looks like in the traditional classroom, what it looks like in somebody else's house. Don't do that. So try not to compare. Just, take the advice that serves you and just, leave the rest.
Yeah, I like that. The expectations. Did I write that? I don't know who wrote that. The expectations for what success looks like in your home. Everybody's version of success in your home and your homeschooling journey is different. And what you've got as success that day may not be for somebody else, but for you, that's a big win. And I'm thinking of, some past days where it may not have been an academic success, but maybe it was socially getting along that day or something.
Success.
Whatever it is. Take the wins and, and celebrate those because they're important. So until next time, keep the lessons light and the moments meaningful. Thanks for escaping with us.